everybody. So a few years ago, I started charting all the movies I saw that year because the Oscar nominations would come out and I would get incensed. I would say, this movie sucked, but it got nominated because it's, quote, artistic. And then I would think to myself, what was the best movie you saw that year? And I could never come up with an answer because I never charted it. So in 2015, I started writing down every movie I saw that year if I had never seen it before. No matter what year it came out, if I was seeing it for the first time, I wrote it down that year. So that way, at the end of the year, I could go back and confidently say, this was the best movie or this was the worst movie I saw that year. And I was putting these on, just Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but now that I have a YouTube channel, I figured I'd put it on here. So I'm actually going to write down, I'm going to put in the description of this all the movies I saw in 2019. I saw 121 movies, 52 of them were in theaters, so it's a pretty nice number there. So you can, if you just click in the description, you'll see all the movies I saw that year to give you an idea. No particular order, it was really just the order that I saw them in. But I'm going to give you guys, this is the best movies I saw. And there's some honorable mentions first, then we'll go into the top 5. Some of these I did do movie reviews for, so if you want just a quick 1-minute review, just go back, search through my videos, and you'll find it. So the first one we'll start out with is The Favorite, or The Favorite, if you will. Came out in 2018, but I saw it in 2019, and this was a Yorgos Lanthimos movie that was nominated for Best Picture. And I'm a fan of Yorgos Lanthimos. I was a big fan of the movie Killing of a Sacred Deer. To this day, it still sits with me. He's a very unique director, weird dude. Definitely something wrong with him. This was his most normal movie, though, and it was set in a Victorian era, but it didn't have that upper crusty Victorian feel. It had more levity to the situation. It was funny at times, but it was serious at times. The acting was tremendous, obviously. Olivia Colman did win the Oscar for that, and I thought it was well-deserved, and I love this movie. I was all about it. The second one that I'll go with is Paddington. This movie came out in 2014. I realized it's 2019. It took me 5 years to see this movie. Once again, though, if I'm seeing it for the first time, I'm putting it on the list. I loved it. I went in with low expectations on this, and that's another thing. A lot of times your expectation will dictate kind of where you put a movie, and I went in with low expectations with Paddington, and it exceeded it. Now, I haven't seen Paddington 2 yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it in 2020. It's on HBO. But this movie, I'm a kid at heart, and I love kids' movies, and I thought this was really well done. It was a really good storyline. And I just, I was a sucker for that bear. And this is in no particular order, though. This is just, the honorable mentions. The third one I'll go with, and this is a movie I did do a 1-minute review for, so you can find it on the channel, but John Wick 3. I am a sucker for the John Wick franchise. I think the John Wick 3 franchise is one of the best franchises we got in the decade, because you just look at the underdog story of John Wick. It comes out in February. That's not a month usually for good movies. It's got Keanu Reeves, and I know that everybody's all Keanu Reeves'd up right now, but when John Wick, the first one, came out, not a lot of people were huge fans of Keanu Reeves. He was kind of the butt of a lot of jokes. But what this franchise does so well is they don't rest on their laurels, and they keep expanding on this Hitman universe. They did it in John Wick 2, when I think a lot of us, me included, were expecting to get kind of taken to. You just change up tiny little details, but it's the same movie. No, they didn't do that, and they expanded on it. And they expanded on it in John Wick 3. I went to go see it 3 times in theaters. I had no problem seeing it 3 times in theaters. And I can't wait for the fourth one that's coming out in, I believe, 2021. All right, another movie that is actually a movie that I did a review on, Toy Story 4. It was a movie that I didn't think we needed, but we got, and I loved it. I am a huge Toy Story fan. I have a Buzz Lightyear backpack. I'm a 30-year-old male, and I still use a Buzz Lightyear backpack. I love this franchise. I am the perfect age for this franchise because I was 6 when the original one came out. I thought the third one was the perfect ending, but the fourth one was tremendous, and I hope that they're done with it because I just don't want them to get to the point where they're just mailing it in. But Toy Story 4 definitely on my list. Another one that I did a review on, Villains. Villains was a movie that just flew under the radar. It came out in, I think, August. At least I saw it in August. And this was a movie with Bill Skarsgård right after it, and it's just this little tiny indie movie that is so good. If you're not familiar with Villains, basically you have these 2 junkies who steal a car, and they break down in front of a house, and they break into it, and they find a girl chained up in the basement of the house. And now they have the moral issue of, what do we do? Do we leave this girl, or do we wait for the people to come home and kind of confront them? And they decide to wait for the people and confront them. And this whole story is so well done, and it's a very low budget. I won't say it's a horror movie because it was way funnier than I thought it was going to be, and it's very well done. But it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It didn't make my top 5, but when this movie hits digital, which I think it already did actually, make sure to check this out. The another movie that I did a review on, The Irishman, and once again, you're going to hear a lot of it. I did a review on it, but The Irishman, the only reason that this didn't make my top 5 of the year is because of the last half hour. The last half hour drags, and I understand why the last half hour drags, because he's dying, and death is a slow, painful process, and they're trying to wrap up his life. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry, you probably watched it already at this point. But for the first 3 hours, this movie, to me at least, really, really moves. Now, as a Philadelphian, I do have a problem with him saying we went on the 476. It's not 476, it's 476. But this movie was tremendous, I thought. I thought they did a really good job of just the decades, spanning the decades, keeping you engaged as an audience member, and also the chemistry between Pesci, De Niro. It's so well done, and Scorsese shines in this movie after a bad movie in Silence, I thought. So, The Irishman, tremendous. Good year for Netflix. Another movie that I'll mention from Netflix I didn't do a review on, but The King with Timothée Chalamet. This movie has probably my favorite speech of the year in movies. His Make It England speech still gives me chills. I still watch it all the time. I'll only watch that scene. But the movie itself is phenomenal, and I think it's based off of Henry VIII, maybe, from Shakespeare. But Chalamet shines in this. It's actually written by Joel Edgerton and another guy, but this movie is very good. If you haven't checked it out, it's one of the best Netflix movies, if not the best Netflix movie they've ever come out with. And Chalamet really, really shines and shows off his acting chops. Obviously, he's been in Oscar nominations before, and he's been in Oscar conversations. He's not going anywhere. I think he's the future Leo or the next Leo. He's really good in this. All right, another movie. I did a movie review for. And make sure to go watch the movie review for this. It's only 60 seconds like all my other ones. But this movie's called The Vast of Night. It actually hasn't come out yet. I was lucky enough to see it at the Philadelphia Film Festival back in October. But it's going to come out in March from Amazon Studios. And it started making the festival scene, and then it ended up getting sold to Amazon. And this is such a amazing, low-budget, I don't want to say a horror movie, sci-fi movie. And it basically centers around a 1950s New Mexico town where a radio DJ gets a very strange phone call with a weird noise in the back, and he puts out that noise to his audience members, and they're trying to figure out what this noise is while the entire town is actually at a basketball game. Him and a switchboard operator are trying to track down where this noise is coming from. It's so well done. It's done in like a Twilight Zone kind of feel to it. It's very unique. This director, whose name, I'm sorry, it's escaping me, but he's definitely going places. I think this is his first feature film. And this is a movie that when it comes out, I think you're definitely going to want to check out, search out, see. It's very well done. I thought when it came out it was going to make my top 5. It just didn't. But it's definitely makes my top 10 of the year for sure, and I can't wait for this movie to come out and people start, the word of mouth on this I think will truly spread, because it's a low budget movie and it just really shines. The next one that I'll say, of course my wife calls me while I'm doing this, and then it cuts the video off, so I'll just pick up where I left off. Next movie is a movie I did a review on, Ford versus Ferrari. I love true stories. I'm a sucker for true stories, and this is a very well done true story with Christian Bale, Matt Damon. Christian Bale will absolutely get nominated for the Oscar in this. Tells the true story of the Ford Motor Company versus the Ferrari Motor Company at the 24 Hours at Le Mans race. There's a documentary on this that is called The 24-Hour War. I think the movie's better. I kind of got bored with The 24-Hour War, but this movie, however, was very well done, very good. I can't suggest it enough. It's one of the best movies of the year. It narrowly just missed my top 5, and definitely check this out when it hits, streaming services. The next movie I'll talk about is actually the last movie I saw in 2019, Jojo Rabbit. Taika Waititi directed this, wrote this movie. He obviously is from Thor Ragnarok and directed that movie, but in this one, he got a little heat for it because it's centered around a Hitler youth who's obsessed with Hitler. He actually talks to an imaginary Hitler, and he ends up finding a Jewish girl living in his house who's protected by his mother, and how he kind of befriends her. This movie does satire at its best. It's got a human element to it and a good feel to it, but at the same time making fun of the Nazi angle of it. It's not bringing levity to Hitler. It's just, it's hard to describe. It's satire. It's satire at its finest. It's tremendous. And the final movie I'll talk about is, if I had my top 5, this was number 6. I had a tough time keeping it off of it. Marriage Story with Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson. This movie is acting at its finest. Adam Driver will, I think, be nominated for this movie. It's so well done. And what I love about this movie is a lot of movies, you just see so much fighting between divorced couples. And in this movie, it starts right off with what they love about each other. It's just they're getting divorced, and a lot of times it happens, right? People fall apart. It's going to happen with me and my wife because she keeps calling me during movie reviews. So people fall apart, and they fall out of love, but they still love each other. They're just not in love with each other. And this movie is so well done, so good. It's on Netflix now. It's one of the stronger movies that Netflix did this year. It's, if not one of the best, if not the best movie they did this year. As I said, I like The King, but you figure The King, Marriage Story, Irishman. Netflix had a really, really good year with movies. Ended strong with them. So Marriage Story is number 6 for me. And then we'll go to number 5, a movie that I did a 60-second review for, Joker. DC has had problems with movies. I don't think I'm going on a limb by saying that. Their movies usually suck, right? Aquaman, complete trash. But you have Todd Phillips, who's famous from doing The Hangover, and he jumps into doing an origin story of the Joker, which has literally never been done before. He's coming up with it from scratch, and this was just a dark, gritty comic book movie. You've had the R-rated movies before for comic book movies like Deadpool, and even Logan was tremendous. That Logan was actually in my top 5 of the year that I saw that. But Joker is in that same realm as Logan, where it's just dark and gritty and raw and so well done. Joaquin Phoenix shines in this, but I also think that another thing that shines in this is the music. I actually reached out to the composer who was in charge of the music in this because the music really sets the tone of this movie. It's so well done. If you haven't seen Joker, it's not your typical DC movie, meaning it sucks. It's actually tremendous, and I loved it, and the ending I thought was perfect, and it really shows you how this guy just rose to become an anti-hero for the city of Gotham in a tough time. The 4th movie I'll talk about is a movie that is going to hit wide release in a couple weeks, January 11th, I believe. It's a movie called Just Mercy. I was lucky enough to see it back in October in an advanced screening, and this movie is a movie and a story that we've seen before. It centers around a wrongly convicted guy in Alabama who was put on death row for a crime he didn't commit with not a lot of evidence at all. But it's a true story of a lawyer from Harvard who comes in and is making it his mission to give these guys a fair defense. And it's a true story of a guy named Bryan Stevenson. And this movie really just touches that emotional chord in you. I was getting choked up watching this movie. And it's also just a look at how messed up the judicial system is in our country. And how at times, it means well, but just people get lost through the cracks. And unfortunately, there is a bias in some part of our countries for certain people. And this movie was tremendous. I loved it. I originally thought in October it was going to get nominated. I don't know if it will yet. I think that Jamie Foxx will for sure. I think this movie should get nominated for Best Picture. Obviously, I have it in my top 5. Don't know if it will. The 3rd movie, another movie that is going to hit wide release in a couple weeks, 1917. This movie is a movie I did a 60-second review for, and I didn't mention it in the 60-second review, and I'm kicking myself for not mentioning it in my 60-second review. But Roger Deakins, who is the famous cinematographer, he did Shawshank, he did the last Blade Runner. I believe he won an Oscar finally for Blade Runner 2049. He is the lock for the Oscar for cinematography, because this movie, I'm getting sick of people saying it was done in one take. It's not. There are clearly 2 parts of this movie where the director clearly could have said take. Now, obviously, or cut, and they could have, done another take. Obviously, this movie can't be done in one take, but it's just so genius filmmaking in the way that they roll into the next scene, making you think that it's flawless transition, while also keeping an intense storyline. I've seen people online say, why couldn't they just call ahead? Why couldn't they do this? Why couldn't they do that? Because the storyline centers around these 2 soldiers who are tasked with reaching a command unit a couple towns over because they're about to walk into an ambush. And they cover that in this movie. They've covered their bases, but this movie is really well done. Sam Mendes is really good in this. I think he'll get nominated for Best Director. This movie should get nominated for Best Picture. And Roger Deakins, lock for cinematography for the Oscar for that. Really good. When this movie comes out, you're going to want to see this in IMAX. It is, it's not, I said this in the review, not Black Hawk Down. It's not the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. It's a slow, drawn out, tense movie, but very, very well done. The second movie Second movie on my list for best movies of 2019, Avengers Endgame. I say this because this movie was 3 hours long, and it just rolled. It kept my attention, and it kept me, into the movie the entire time. Look, the reality is, the Russo brothers, the Marvel's universe, Kevin Feige, everybody involved with this movie could have mailed it in, right? They could have pulled Game of Thrones. They could have done what Benioff and Weiss did, which was completely mail it in and go, okay, we don't really have to put a lot of effort in this because we know the people are going to come. Everybody was going to go watch Avengers Endgame because they want to see how it ended. But this group didn't mail it in, and they put together a tremendous storyline right from the get-go. They fast forward 5 years into the future. There was an audible gasp in my theater when I saw that, and it was for good reason because you didn't see it coming. They kill Thanos right away, and you're going, okay, but how did they get him back? Okay, maybe the storyline of the whole going back in time was a bit lazy, but the fact that they set it up in minor movies like Ant-Man, not big movies like Thor or Iron Man, but they set that up in minor movies like Ant-Man, and it just all brought the 22, 23, however many movies the MCU has, but they all wrapped it up in this one movie, and every little minute detail that they had in all these other previous movies were brought together in this. It was an homage to those other movies, but it was so well done, and it never dragged at any point. It was cheesy when all of the female empowerment came. Not that I'm against female empowerment. It was corny, but I get it. It's 2019. We have to do that. But this movie was so good, and it touched the emotional heartstring for sure, because I had a kid, I was born in December of 2018, so the whole Tony Stark angle, yeah, not good for me. And finally, my number one movie of 2019, a movie that I actually did not do a 60-second review for because I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time. The movie Us. All right, Jordan Peele jumps on the scene with the movie Keanu. Yes, you thought I was going to say it was the movie Get Out. No, Keanu, because he was a comedy guy, and everybody expected him to continue to do comedies. He did Key and Peele, he does Keanu, which is, by the way, a hilarious movie. And then he decides to go into horror. And I remember first seeing the trailer for Get Out and thinking, man, that looks really, really bad. And it wasn't at all. It was really, really good. So he does Get Out, and it's phenomenal, and it, wins awards, deservingly so. But I think the whole question was, can he repeat this? Yeah. Because Us was, in my opinion, better than Get Out. And the reason I say that is because this movie was more creative. When I sit back and think about Get Out, I can imagine people coming up with that storyline. When I sit back and think about the movie Us, I can't imagine anybody coming up with that storyline. That storyline is crazy creative and crazy good. And the acting in this from Lupita Nyong'o, whose name I completely just butchered, I apologize, but so good. This movie from start to finish is great. And what I love about Jordan Peele movies is every little detail in his movies you need to pay attention to. So that t-shirt the person's wearing, you need to pay attention to it. That song they're listening to, you need to pay attention to it. It might come back. It might not, but it might come back. He is so good as a filmmaker that he's become that filmmaker where anything he puts out, I will go watch, whether it be comedy, whether it be horror. And this movie, while it came out in February, I think it came out in February. It might have came out in January. Look, I don't know. But it came out earlier in the year, and I think it's going to get forgotten by a lot of people when they think back on the best movies of 2019. For me, nah. This movie's it. Us was so good, so creative, so well done. I can't wait to see what Jordan Peele has in store for us coming up in future years, but definitely check that out. So, once again, to recap all of them, the honorable mentions, and I'm going to look up because I'm going to read off a list. The Favorite, Paddington, John Wick 3, Toy Story 4, Villains, The Irishman, Vast of Night, The King, Ford v Ferrari, Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit, and once again, my top 5, Joker, Just Mercy, 1917, Avengers Endgame, and Us. So thanks everybody for watching this video. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the dislike, I guess, if you didn't like this. You can comment, but I don't read the comments because a lot of times people are mean, and I just don't need that in my life. But if you guys want to argue amongst yourselves down there, go ahead. That's cool. And check out my video for the worst movies of 2019 because 121 movies, I watched a lot of shit this year. So definitely check that out, and thanks for watching.